Okay. This meeting is being recorded by the Economic Development Committee. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chair at this time. Appearing to be none. We're going to start with the meeting minutes. If everybody's had a chance to read the meeting minutes. I take a motion to approve them. If
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second, Hirschfeld.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 So I think on the agenda first is our first item on the agenda. We had the planning board recommendation. Hi, everybody again. So we had the planning board recommendation on the zoning amendment, and we had come to a decision at last month's meeting. And I had Clerk Scott put that on the agenda in light of that they had additional information on that, and I'm open to discussion on that if anybody had anything to discuss on it.
Are we talking about number 4 on the agenda?
Yes, wait a minute. I'm going to get to the top of the agenda here. Sorry. Okay. Oh, all right. All right. We just finished. We finished the public hearing with the planning board.
Okay.
Okay. So now, next would be discussion. But there are 2 motions. Okay. So we can discuss now. But there were 2 motions on the table. If you wanted to, I thought we could. The first one that was on actually was, as you can see, was the amendment to Chapter 200 zoning 4.2, the rural residential, that we had discussed last week or 2 weeks ago. In light of, wait a minute, I don't need that. Sorry. In light of the planning board's recommendation, I am happy to bring us forward to the full council with whatever we had decided. I just had that on the agenda in case there were any other thoughts, because they added 1 other use. Had anybody had any thoughts about that?
It might make sense. I'm going to make a motion to suspend the rules of procedure so we can take the public hearing item first.
Thank you.
Since we're coming hot off the press there, so we can discuss and vote there and then come back to what we did last meeting, if that makes sense for the committee. If not, then I'm happy to mom brain, take it back. I'm happy to not do that.
I would second that.
If I may,
Yes.
rules of procedure actually don't apply during subcommittee meetings, so I don't think we need to. I think you're fine to go ahead.
Very formal, Counselor Wheeler.
I concur. I think we were just talking about that, and I think that was the place to start. It was just that the agenda items were reversed, so I was trying to stay in order. But why don't we continue the discussion that we were having? Because I was hoping that we would come to a decision on this tonight.
In terms of number 4, again, the thing we just discussed with the planning board.
In terms of number 4.
Do we have to take an action? This is not a motion that we have to vote on. We did just discuss this pretty thoroughly. But,
There is a motion to make if we want to do it under item 6.
oh, yeah, no, we were still on 4.
Well, for,
We've moved beyond 4. We've had our public hearing, and so now I think we're on 6.
All right.
so thoughts,
It is a little wonky in the agenda.
yes, I agree. So we were discussing on that. I thought everybody had a lot of valid points. If anybody wanted to further discuss, in my thinking, actually, I'm going to say first, I think it was very complicated. I think there was a big part of that where they were trying to preserve the farmland and do a couple of things. I certainly can see where Councilor Wheeler's was coming from. And I thought by doing one thing is preserving more of the farmland and allowing this business to come in. And it did seem to me like it was general commercial because it's preceded by 6 or 7 businesses. So I could see the thought process behind it. And I think from when we met before, must have been in December, November or December, that the thought was that that there was a positive feeling towards this type of business. Anyone else care to share?
Are we discussing, which proposal are we discussing?
We're discussing right now that which Councilor Stemple brought up. She said we were just talking about, we just came off of a public hearing. So right now we are talking about the change of extending the general commercial zoning district along Burniston Road to the northeast section of Greenfield. Okay, that's what we're talking about right now.
And could I ask, Ginny, you said that there was a change that the planning board put in it?
No, not on that.
Okay.
That was Councilor Stemple asked if we could take this out of the order that it was on the agenda, and I'm fine with that. It makes perfect sense. There is no change. There is no change from what the planning board just brought forward. It is exactly how it is, and we were just talking about it, and I thought that made sense. So disregard my comment.
And Ashley, could I ask what motion did you see? Oh, I see. The both under 6. These are both motions.
Yes.
Yeah, yep, correct.
Okay. And I just I'm having deja vu because I think didn't we talk about all this the last meeting?
We did. We did talk about it the last time, and this is what happens. We have joint public hearings, and then generally speaking, we don't deliberate together. Frequently, the planning board deliberates a week or so afterwards. They had written this one as I think actually stemming from the previous meeting in December, that they had been, because we've been talking about this area, about what was going to happen on indoor action. So it wasn't exactly new, but it was a new spin on it by changing and extending the zoning. I hear where Councilor Wheeler was coming from, and I've seen it done in occasions. I've done it myself when we were on planning board to accommodate certain things. When the hospital was buying some of the land from the church, we expanded the hospital zone. A long time ago, I think that happened with limited commercial.
And can we, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think
Yeah.
I'm getting confused as to which motion we're discussing. So I think it might be helpful. I know I suggested that we talk about today's public hearing, but I don't care either way. I just want to make sure that we're very specific about which motion. So perhaps Chair Zorger, you could have somebody read into record which motion we're talking about and then focus there for right now. Because I'm getting a little confused as to which we're talking about because they're very closely related.
Okay.
I'd be happy to read if you tell me which one you want me to read.
We're reading the last one now.
Got it.
Okay.
And do I do it in the form of a motion? I move that okay. I move that we recommend to the full council that we extend the existing general commercial GC zoning district along Burniston Road in the northeast section of Greenfield from rural residential RC to GC to the Burniston town line by extending 500 feet from the road center line of the west side of Burniston Road, 500 feet from the road center line on the east side of Burniston Road to I-91, and changing the entirety of parcels R10-5, R10-8, R10-8A, R10-9, and R10-13 north of I-1 and east of Burniston Road from RC to GC.
And is there a second for the purpose of discussion?
Second, Wheeler.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Stemple. Okay, thank you. All right. Thoughts? Yes.
I think I gave most of mine, so I don't need to speak here really. I think in general I'm sensitive to this because it's an entrance on the north side of town. The southern entrance is in my precinct. I've done a lot of work, or rather, I've heard from a lot of constituents who've tried to find ways to clean up the southern entrance. And really, once you go commercial in an area, it can't be done. It's really difficult. It's really difficult to ask a business that's established to move. So that's why, this kind of like, it doesn't exactly pass my smell test, but I understand, like I said, that planning board's being clever and finding a way that will have minimal impact to encourage a development that I absolutely support. So that just kind of, hopefully that clarifies why I don't love this, but I'll support it.
Can I say something?
Councilor Elmer, yes, go ahead.
Yeah. From my bicycle ride, I have to say it took me 2 tries to find the property. Yeah, I could see the dome, but it's really, it's up a hill and it's behind. And if there were a better place in Greenfield to hide a marijuana cultivation facility, that I don't know about it. And I do think that there's not much to recommend. There really are piles of old abandoned mobile homes there that this will improve that entrance to Greenfield, I think. But you can't tell what commercial operations are going to go up there. The zoning board of appeals is going to have to keep an eye on that, I guess.
And I'm going to raise my hand.
Go ahead.
And like part of me is always with zoning trying to think of not the immediate moment, but the future. And so I feel like we're being pushed in a positive direction, right? So we're thinking about a positive introduction to this. This is a great project. I'm happy to keep putting the green into Greenfield. I think that's wonderful. But thinking future, I have the same hesitation that Councilor Wheeler does when you make these big, vast changes. And nostalgic, I played field hockey at that dome when it was brand new. So part of me is like, no. And my bonus daughter plays softball up there in the winter. So it's like, no. It's a great facility and it's a great asset for our youth, but it's being underutilized for sure. So that being said, so like my mind, I'm rambling, but my mind is thinking, okay, like what does this mean for the future? Like not just thinking in this moment, because this is for a specific project. And my rule of thumb for zoning is be very careful when you're making a change in zoning for a specific project. However, I think this is a project of opportunity because it's a newer thing being allowed across the country. And if we're able to capitalize on it by making this small change, by expanding and not completely eradicating a type of zoning in an area, I will absolutely support it.
Thank you. I'd like to share one more thought on that. The very last parcel, which is the other big parcel, right after the abandoned cars, right before the entrance to Burniston Road, we had to park our cars and walk up through there because that's where Pacifico is putting in the large scale solar. So there actually is a plan for that. I think they were going on that side. Their plan was to be there, and it extends into Burniston, and none of it will be one of the guidelines on this on the permitting was that it will not be seen from the road. That was something that Town Line Creamy wanted to make sure. So I don't feel, I totally hear what you're saying, but I think that's what's happening to that one. That's what's happening for the most part to that parcel. So I would be voting in favor of it. Anyone else?
Councilor Hirschfeld, I agree with I think all the views that have been expressed. I generally don't like extending this zoning to commercial, but I think the town is really hungry for the tax dollars that are really so important. So I'm in favor of this project. So that's where I stand.
Me too.
Okay. All right, so we spoke at the last one, so we had a motion and a second. So I'm gonna was there further discussion? Any further discussion? All right. Councilor Elmer, would you take the roll? So this is now, we are voting on the motion. We are voting on the zoning motion as proposed, as stated and seconded. Okay?
Okay, I'm gonna, Counselor Stemple Ray,
Yes.
Counselor Wheeler,
Yes.
Counselor Hirschfeld,
Yes.
Counselor Elmer, yes. Chairperson Disorder?
Yes.
Disorder?
Yes, disorder. Yes. Okay.
That was unanimous.
And now I am going to, or actually, Counselor Elmer, do you want to read the motion above that, the motion above that, so that everyone will know what we're talking about currently? And then I have a statement to read.
I move that we forward to the whole council an amendment to chapter 200, zoning, section 4.2, rural residential RC, subsection C, uses permitted by special permit, by striking subsections 19 and 20 in their entirety and replace with a new subsection 19 as follows. 19, quote, marijuana cultivator pursuant to 207.17, provided that any structure erected for such use in the RC zoning district must be usable either for other agricultural uses such as hoop houses, greenhouses, and barns, or for residential use.
Okay, thank you. And I know that you've all received the planning board's recommendation, which stated just that. They also included our amendment to that, which included a allowed marijuana retail as an accessory use to a marijuana cultivation facility. That is what we voted on 2 weeks ago. However, as well, they have as well as new language to allow marijuana product manufacturing as an accessory use to a marijuana cultivation facility. And we have, at our last meeting, we had a positive unanimous on what we had. I just wanted to be able to say that we had considered their language also. Any thoughts or discussion on that?
Well,
Yes. Councilor Elmer.
well, it's a little confusing because the language that we approved at our last meeting is not there, and neither is the language that the planning board put in there. It would be better if we had a version of this that had both editions.
Well, because this was the actual zoning amendment, what will happen is we will discuss tonight, or we have discussed, but we're discussing this tonight. And when we get to the floor of the council, it will be as written, and then we can state what our amendment was, and that will be done on the floor. I just wanted to make sure that we had considered all angles of this, and it will be read as written, and then we'll say what our amendment is, and that would be added. Yes, Councilor Wheeler. If I have that incorrect, just please feel free to hop in.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
No, I don't mean to correct you in any way. I wanted to let the committee know that I had objected to the fact that a vote had been taken that was not on the agenda at the previous meeting. And so I had asked Chair DeSorger to put this back on the agenda. So I appreciate that it is on the agenda, and I hope that we can take another vote on it. I understand, that there was an interpretation that it was that it was an allowable vote. But when you vote on something and a committee member is not present, like I wasn't, well, I didn't know that you were going to be voting on it. If I had, I might have changed my work schedule around so that I was able to be present. So I appreciate that it's back on there. I would say this subcommittee could certainly motion to amend to include the language. I'm kind of open to both, I guess. The one thing I really wanted to point out about this that I didn't hear discussed at the previous meeting was that this amendment removes the craft marijuana cooperative piece, which was in 20 there. And that, from my understanding, is a provision that the Cannabis Control Commission put in to keep investment in state by requiring that all principals, including board members, be Massachusetts residents. Now, I'm not against this. I just want to make sure that we have a little discussion about the fact that by amending that out, we would be eliminating a tool that prioritizes in-state investment over out-of-state developers. Because we've had some bad luck with out-of-state developers, and I'm not impugning the ones who are applying, because I loved the proposal that I heard, and I think it's great. So I just hope that we can have a little discussion about that piece.
Councilor, yes, Councilor Stemple.
Yeah, and I guess a little further discussion on why that provision was crossed out would be helpful too, because it seems it's not that it helps or hurts. I think it's just important to expand it in that capacity, to Councilor Wheeler's point. So I'm curious what the rationale was to strike.
So it wasn't actually something, it isn't that we're striking the craft cooperative, because there's several types of licenses under the Cannabis Commission. Under cultivation is a craft cooperative. Okay, we can definitely still have a craft cooperative. When we wrote this initially, and it was 6 to 9 months in the writing, that was the only type of cultivator that we were going to allow in the RC district, was a craft cooperative. But under the definitions, if you look in the definitions in the zoning book, that is a type of cultivator. So we are not in any way, shape, or form eliminating a craft cooperative from happening here. The fact of the matter was that I think it's a difficult thing for people to do economically. One of the things with these businesses is it's pretty difficult to start. But the idea of a cooperative, I think, probably appeals to each and every one of us. And I remember lobbying for it to go in here, for there to be farming of this in the RC district, because I thought we have some of the best farmers in the whole world. And I actually felt like we might create a strain of marijuana that was famous. And it's just true, like our beer. And there was just part of it where we wanted to protect the farmland at the same time. And I remember thinking that 5,000 was far too low, but the tier limit and with the combination of this, with it being a lot of it being outdoor grow, I think it's sort of the best of both worlds. So I looked. Do you mind if I continue for a little more? So I looked to see what was happening in other communities now, like what types of licenses, because I wanted to make sure that we weren't making a mistake by adding something as an accessory use. And many of the places actually had, like when the zoning regulations were written to begin with, it was like, you may manufacture, you may cultivate, but no retail at the same time. But as things have gone on, and it's only been really a year and a half, maybe 2, many of the places would have put in for a dual licensing, co-located licensing of both cultivating and manufacturing. So because it's not really, you're not manufacturing marijuana. What is this, like growing corn and making cornbread? That's how I would think of it. And it would be allowing that to happen in the same place. They obtain another license, and I can see many places where that was starting to be done, because there are also a lot of constraints with it as far as the transportation, et cetera. They have to get special delivery licenses. So that was just for a little point of clarification for, and I did talk to Director Tworog about that, and he said it definitely, especially here where it's under a special permit, and we so care about our farmland, they would make sure that whatever we put as an accessory use was indeed an accessory use. I want to be quiet so someone else will talk. Oh, yes, Councilor Elmer.
Well, according to Councilor Wheeler says it would be that we're permitted to put those amendments into the language at this meeting.
Yes.
And I'm just thinking that it might be clearer to the whole council what we're doing if we presented a finished document rather than said, okay, we've got this thing and now we want to add a couple other things. If we give it to them all wrapped up in a package, I think it'll go more smoothly.
Which actually was my intent, to make sure that we weren't saying that the planning board had this and we had that. I was surprised that they had added additional language. And then I thought, let's revisit it. In addition, Councilor Wheeler was not able to be present. I feel much better about that because that's 5 people. There's wisdom in a group. I always think there's a lot of wisdom in a group, and not one of us has all of it. That's for sure. And I think there was a uniformity if we did that, but still, when we go to the council floor, it is my understanding that what's going to be in the packet for this week on the agenda is going to be this, and then it's going to be just the wording, the way it is, the way that Councilor Elmer or myself just read it, and then we're going to add those 2 additional language, and we're going to, if this were to be the will of the 5 of us, it would be, we'd say the planning board had this uniform decision, and if that's the decision we reach, that's more of a tied up package, but it won't be written that way on March 17th. Do I have that all correct? Right? Yes?
So if we're going to vote on this motion, we probably should vote on the motion as amended. Even if what it says in the, if we want to put forward a positive recommendation for something, we probably should have voted on it the way we're offering it.
Right.
So I don't actually remember the language, but if you've got it in front of you,
But
if you read it, the 2 amendments, I would support putting them in the motion.
all right, and we can still discuss. We're not coming to a vote right now, okay? So let me just find where I hold that thought. Okay. 24. I have it marked. It won't be long. I'm getting faster. All right.
I'm going to get a drink of water. I'll be right back.
There you go. Okay. So, shall I wait till Phil gets back? I'll wait 1 minute till he gets back. I found it though. Is everybody okay with me saying the language, making the motion? Because
Absolutely.
okay, all right. I'm just gonna wait a second.
Yeah.
Councilor Elmer.
I'm back.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I'm gonna move that we amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200, section 204.2, rural residential, RC, subsection C, uses by special permit, by striking paragraphs 19 and 20 in their entirety and replace with new paragraph 19 as follows. Marijuana cultivator pursuant to 200-7.17, provided that any structure erected for such use in the RC zoning district must also be usable either for other agricultural uses such as hoop houses, greenhouses, and barns, and for residential use, and further amend section 200-4.2 rural residential RC of the zoning ordinance by adding a new number 20 under subsection C, uses allowed by special permit, so that it reads marijuana product manufacturer and marijuana retailer as accessory uses to the use marijuana cultivator pursuant to 200-7.17. So I just made that motion. I would need a second, and then we could discuss that.
I'll second it.
Okay, let me just write that down. Who did what? Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So now, does anybody have any more discussion about this or thoughts on it? Yeah. Councilor Wheeler.
Thanks. Yeah, so it seems like there's two aspects to this. One being, do we want to allow accessory uses to marijuana in the RC? And then the other thing that occurs to me is, does this give competitive advantage to companies that are in the RC as opposed to the other districts? But their cultivation is only allowed in the, is cultivation allowed in other districts, Chair DeSorger?
Cultivation is, let me just look to the use table.
I can't remember.
Yes, I think it was just that, I think that was the only place that we had it in there to begin with. Okay. Yes. It's not, wait a minute, craft marijuana cooperative can be in GC. Marijuana cultivator is allowed in GC, GI, PI, and RC. But by doing this, we're eliminating the tier. We're eliminating the tier limit too.
Right. Thank you. So I guess it seems like, I mean, I think I'm in favor of this, but it seems like it creates an inconsistency where suddenly cultivators in the GI or the PI are not allowed to use accessory use, but we're talking this through as we go, and I'm thinking it through as I'm talking. Do they have other uses that are allowed to them because they're in GI and PI? Does that make sense? Do you get where I'm coming from?
Yes. We put things in different districts depending on what the district was. Marijuana research facility was allowed in CC, LC, GC, office, and PI by special permit. Standard testing was allowed in the hospital zone, CC, central commercial, limited commercial, general commercial, office, and PI. Independent testing, which these are all different licenses. Independent testing was in the hospital, CC, LC, GC, office, and PI. And the retail was allowed in CC, LC, GC. And I do want to tell you, as far as the retail goes, that the question came up about the licenses. If anybody is selling at all, that would be one of our 8 licenses. 5 are already spoken for.
Gotcha.
I don't know if I answered your question.
Well,
Counselor.
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I'll phrase it more as a comment this time. I think my comment is, I think I'm in favor of this accessory use piece. I
Mhm.
think I would also be in favor of allowing accessory use in GI and PI. I guess it just makes sense. Like I wouldn't want a cultivator in the GI to come forward and say, why am I allowed to grow but not sell? Yet my neighbor in the RC is able to.
Right.
So, I don't think I guess it's probably more of a comment for the planning board going forward, or us, if like that's an inconsistency that people would want to tie up.
Well, one of the biggest, I hear what you're saying. One of the biggest parts that we're doing with this change is eliminating the tier limit, because we're still going to have craft cooperatives. I hear what you're saying, but for instance, I have to go back to 20.
Jenny Ashley had a question or comment.
Yes. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Council Stemple.
I was just going to agree and thank Councilor Wheeler for his thoughts, because I don't think that it's the council's business to unintentionally create some type of a lopsided competition between same like businesses regarding where they are in the city. And so that's something, if we move this forward, then I will certainly want to see the planning board and this committee take up the other districts in order to make it a level playing field. But then we have to think more clearly about what does that mean for that in each district if we're adding it here. And so I think that's, perhaps we make that, perhaps we talk about it a little bit more now and then delineate for future districts. But I think it's really important that we don't unintentionally create disparity between the businesses.
My understanding is that we won't be doing that. I don't think that we're doing that at all. Let me just look. Wait a minute.
While you look, if I may, I remember when way at the beginning of this process, someone from the GI district, a property owner, had lost a commitment because they had someone who wanted to come in and be vertically integrated. And so, and I don't remember if that was changed. I think I supported, and I would support more mixed use in the GI in general, and this goes along with that. But hopefully you can dig up what exactly is allowed.
Could I suggest something?
Mm-hmm.
We're actually talking about 2 special things, both retail and manufacturing. Those are the 2 accessory uses that we're contemplating adding to RC. We could let the council know that we would like to extend these 2 use cases to specific other bureaus, but we're not in a position to do it right now. We've got this thing on our plate because we've got a candidate who wants to do it. But it's our intention to go through and make, if that is our intention, to make these 2 other uses allowable in the other districts. Is that Is that the sense of what you were asking for, Otis?
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at.
Okay.
I think that I do believe that I do believe because in the there was no tier limit. There wasn't a tier limit in the GC district, so there shouldn't have been. When we just went through the use table again for the GI, that should have been corrected, which I don't have the current one in front of me, but
Could we ask this question of Director Torog? I mean, we don't need an answer right now, but maybe for the next meeting we could, or it's not something we can change right now anyway, because even if it changed, we're called for, we'd need a public hearing. So, I mean,
I'm
I feel like
95% sure that I'm right on that. I think that the tier limit is, I think that we're not, because I absolutely hear what you're saying. We would not want one person to be able to have, this was the big problem with the RC, was that their limit was 5,000 and it was just craft cooperatives. The other places with the cultivators were allowed to have larger facilities.
right. But I guess my question is, in GI and PI, are they allowed to sell or manufacture? Are those allowed uses?
Back to the table of uses. Back to the use table. Hold on. Yes, they are.
Okay. All right. So then, there would be no need for enabling accessory uses. Is that correct? Because it's allowed already as a use?
Hold on.
It's been a couple of years since I've sat on EDC.
Okay. All right, so you have to go back to, nobody else has the books. That's what I keep forgetting. Everybody had the book when I was on planning board. Okay. So in the GI district, marijuana cultivation is allowed in the general commercial, general commercial, GI and PI, and that was without a tier limit.
Yeah, but what about retail and manufacturing?
Retail was not. Retail is allowed in. Yes, I hear what you're saying as far as retail being an accessory use. And I do not have the newest book in front of me. But as I recall, that's exactly what we did, because we wanted to make sure that, but I didn't have, I'd have had to print out that whole 200-page book after we just voted those in a little while ago. But it was for uniformity within the town, so that anybody that was making something, you had the opportunity to have retail as an accessory use. But I will admit that that's not in front of me. I could probably pull it up if I had 3 more computers and 2 more heads.
I'm just looking at Director Torog's memo that has the Appendix A attached to it, and that's all I have in front of me. And so it says that product manufacturing and retail is not allowed as an accessory use in the GI or PI. But like I said, I don't have and I don't remember whether it's an actual use. So I guess I would just ask if we could just have this clarified, because we really don't need to answer it now.
Okay. And we can And if that is, there's more language, they're always working on the language. If they find something that's conflicting, they would fix that, but I certainly can bring that to his attention. Okay?
Thank you.
So right now, what we're talking about,
Is it possible for us to move this forward?
yes. I think so. That's if it's the will of the group. It's up to the 5 of us.
Can we vote on it?
I'm ready unless there's further discussion.
This is a vote on the amendment.
Well, I put it forward, Counselor Wheeler, and I read the whole thing with
Yeah.
the 2 amendments. We didn't vote on the amendment part. We voted on the whole thing. Do you want to vote in parts?
That's
Or
what
you-
that's how I would do it. If that's all
Okay,
right.
so right now we're voting on,
The 2 amendments that you read. Adding the
do we agree
retail.
with it? All right, so right now we're voting on this with the amendments. Do we agree that the amendments should be in there, and then we'll vote on the main motion?
As amended. Yeah, okay,
Yes.
I'll do the roll call. Counselor
Wait a minute,
Stempel.
is everybody clear what we're voting on? Right now, we're just voting that we agree to the 2 amendments.
And
Everybody-
just to clarify, the 2 amendments being the strikes between 19 and 20 as listed on the motion?
The 2,
I'm confused.
okay. all right.
Ginny read a second, I read one version and then
Yeah.
read that again and then read a separate
She
section.
read it on page 7 where it's struck through.
It's the amendment's it's really just the accessory use piece, isn't it?
Right.
Yes, those are the 2 amendments. So it was,
Retail and manufacturing.
right. I'm going to read it again so that we know what we're voting on. All right. Amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200.
What page are you on in the packet?
Right on page 21.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Chapter 200, section 0.2, rural residential district, RC, subsection, uses by special permit, by striking paragraphs 19 and 20 in their entirety and replacing them with a new paragraph as follows. Marijuana cultivator pursuant to 200-7.17, provided that any structure erected for such use in the RC zoning district must also be usable for either agricultural use, such as hoop houses, greenhouses, and barns, or for residential use, and further amend section 204.2 rural residential district RC of the zoning ordinance by adding a new number 20 under the subsection C, uses allowed by special permit, so that it reads marijuana product manufacturing and marijuana retailer as accessory uses to the use marijuana cultivator pursuant to 200-7.17. So we're voting on the amendments right now. I moved that. Is there a second?
Should we also read just the amend the appendix A table uses below,
Yes.
just to read it into record?
Okay.
I don't think you need to read the table, just reading that last sentence is probably suitable.
Amend appendix A, table of uses of the zoning ordinance by adding the following new category.
As seen in the table below.
As seen in the table below. Okay, so that's the motion.
Could I ask a question?
Thank you.
Since the whole thing has now been read, do we have to vote separately on any part of it, or can we just vote for the whole ball of wax now?
You have to do it twice.
Okay.
We have
So-
to vote that we are but we don't even have a second on this yet. Okay.
Second.
Okay, so wait a second. Okay. Motion. Okay, so Councilor Stempel seconds. Stempel. Okay. So this is just on the amendments. So we'll take a roll call vote that we accept the amendments.
Counselor Stempel Ray,
Yes.
Counselor Wheeler,
Yes.
Counselor Hirschfeld,
Yes.
Counselor Elmer, yes. Chairperson Disorder,
Yes.
that's unanimous.
Okay. Now we would have to vote on the entire motion. Okay, and I had one thing to say before that.
Do you like a roll call? Do we
Yes.
need to discuss it?
Okay. Or are we okay to go forward? Does anybody have anything else to say? Okay.
Okay, Counselor Stemple Ray,
Yes.
Counselor Wheeler,
Yes.
Counselor Hirschfeld,
Yes.
Counselor Elmer, yes. Chairperson Disorder,
Yes.
that's unanimous.
Okay. So we would then be bringing that forward to the, and who made I didn't write that down. Who made the motion and the second on the whole motion?
I read it in the beginning,
Okay, so it was you and
and then Wheeler seconded it.
Okay. You and Councilor Wheeler Stemple. Councilor Wheeler seconded. Okay. It's hard to keep these minutes.
It's a new counselor.
Huh? It's hard to keep this and write at the same time. So,
You're doing a great job, Ginny.
thank you. Thank you. It was a very, it's very complicated, but thank you very much. All right, so we got that done. Oh, that just went away. The whole agenda just disappeared. All right, here we are. So now we accepted that. So that's what we would bring forward and say. Now, is there any other new business that anyone has? Okay. I did want to say that just announcing that we are going to have a TIF meeting, and I got all of the information from Director Adams, which I'm going to send to, I think it should actually go to the whole council, but definitely to all of economic development so that everybody can look at that at that meeting. And I will send this forward to everyone too. Director Adams had a proposal on the TIF language, and I think everybody will, take a look at that, and we can decide about that at a later time. And I just wanted to announce that because I knew it. And any old business.
I have a new
yes.
businessy
Oh,
type
certainly,
thing.
certainly.
This committee tends to, zoning is important, but this committee tends to focus heavily on zoning and not much else in my experience sitting here. And I think this committee could and should be charged with taking a deeper look at economic recovery for the city of Greenfield and our businesses. I attended economic recovery forum put on by the chair of Ways and Means for the state. He actually is the state rep for the North End, South End, and Chinatown districts in Boston. So his he has like a rolling set of forums, and so today's was based on hospitality. It was interesting to hear their I don't know what she was exactly. I think she might have worked for the she worked for one of their giant convention centers in the city, maybe the Seaport Convention Center. And she was just talking about the seaports and I guess their region, Boston's strategy for getting tourism back. They're talking about their strategy between like national tourism and then international. They've kind of written off international. Obviously, I don't think Greenfield really focuses on international tourism as much as Boston does. But they had this really interesting approach of taking almost like a target approach. So if you think about a bullseye and a target, and so there's a term for it, and I turn into a pumpkin after 7 p.m. these days, concentric. So thinking about radiating out. So how do we get Franklin County? How do we get Hampshire County? How do we get Hampden County? How do we get Vermont coming into Greenfield? What are our strong suits? What drives people to town? So we will be having the Green River Festival. How do we capitalize on that? I think it would be fun for this committee to take on this thinking, whether it's hosting a forum and getting the wheels turning. But I'd like for this committee to spearhead something other than just zoning. I think we have a responsibility to spearhead something about economic recovery in this pandemic time. I was disappointed not to see it happen last year, but I think everybody was just kind of staying afloat the best they could in terms of both subcommittees and full council. But now that we have our bearings underneath us, I'd like to see this, and I'm open, obviously, as a group, like what we want to take on and what we feel like we can accomplish successfully and meaningfully. But I just think that this group, we should be the ones setting the motion for something like that.
That was a great, I totally concur with you. And I think Director Adams would be happy to work with us. Certainly that was going to be, except that we had zoning tonight, which is really rather labor intensive. And by the time you finish with that, what energy does one have left?
Absolutely.
Not me, but I thought just everybody got the booklet that came out with, and I forget who'd done that, but it was just looking at our downtown. But agreed, there is so much that we could be doing or possibly doing this. And there's parts of this that are already in the works that we're maybe not quite in touch with, like how they're helping the restaurants. But it certainly shouldn't just be zoning. And I have to tell you, I certainly hope that it isn't. I hope that there's lots more that we can do. And I do think that we need to take a good look. And to me, this is part of the economy too. I think that we're mandated to be taking a good look at that, at that TIF part too. That's kind of a little bit more negative energy, but in the end, it could be a little bit a positive thing too, because we have to make sure that everybody's able to stay here. So I think we have to take a good look at that policy.
Oh, and I think Greenville has such a historic negative connotation around TIFs. I think we've seen them as this evil, but really TIFs, special tax assessments, and district improvement plans and everything. I think that they're really tools. They're really important and positive. If somebody comes to us and wants to broker a deal to choose Greenfield over a different community, that is a tool given to us through the state powers that be for us to accept them and create terms that work for both parties. And so I think I want to be cautious when we call a TIF a negative thing, because I feel like it can absolutely be available to us as a positive tool in a very competitive market for businesses.
Right. I guess I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. I'm just going to follow up on that, and then I'll recognize Councilor Elmer. I see businesses that have come here like PV Squared or started here, Real Pickles, and I thought those are the kind of, there's a lot that you'd want to be encouraging them to come here with that. I guess I was looking at, that was one more piece of legislation type of thing that we had to look at, which after, you know what I'm saying? So, but I think we're exactly on the same page. I just, I think it can be a great tool, and it can be a help to get a company started for something, a corporate entity that's maybe on the larger scale stock exchange. Maybe that's, I'm not feeling the same way about it. You know what I mean? But who knows? Anyways, Councilor Elmer, enough of me. Go ahead.
I'm ready to get out of this meeting, but I just want to say that I think we have, Greenfield's got great potential to attract more software developers and a lot of
Mhm.
old office space above on the second and third floor downtown that, you know, it was shown before the pandemic that those things can be fixed up and turned into WeWork kind of places very successfully. And I think, I hope we can pick it up afterwards, but not tonight.
No, not for tonight, but that was a very good, it's a, start off for our next meeting, which I'm supposed to say that at the end, the next meeting. Was there anything else though? First, I just want to make sure everybody get all the things that they wanted to say. Okay. Any old business? Then I'll announce that the next meeting is April 13th at 6 p.m. and it won't be zoning. So, would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I thought Counselor Elmer would have jumped on that. Second.
Okay, so Counselor Stemple seconded it. You should say the way I'm taking these notes. And who said it first? Counselor Wheeler?
Yeah, I think it was me.
All right, so all in favor and good
Aye.
night. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
on your
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.